Let's get into our first story now. We are way ahead of most countries in the world. That's according to Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, as he jumps to the defense of the New Patriotic Party and the interventions of the Akufo-Addo administration targeted at improving Ghana's economy. Ghana is experiencing its slowest growth since 1975, a situation which is mounting pressure on government to redeem its pledge of transforming the lives of the citizenry. Now, delivering a lecture of the country's economy at the Millennium City yesterday, the Vice President outlined a raft of measures that he believes will turn around this situation. Let's listen to him.
The trade balance recorded a surplus for 5 successive years, for the first time in over 30 years. We've recorded surplus for 5 successive years. The trade balance was in deficit between 2013 and 2016, but moved from a deficit of 2016 to a surplus of 1.1 billion in 2017, a larger surplus of 1.8 billion in 2018, and an even larger surplus of 2.2 billion by 2019. The impact of COVID-19 has seen a reduction in the surplus to 2.04 billion in 2020 and a further reduction to 1.1 billion in 2021. Nevertheless, this is still a much stronger performance than the trade deficit of 1.7 billion recorded in 2016, which, ladies and gentlemen, the positive trade balances resulted in a narrowing of the current account deficit as a percentage of GDP between 2017 and 2019, but a subsequent widening of the deficit in 2020 and 2021 as a consequent widening of the deficit in 2020 and 2021 as a result of COVID-19. Even that notwithstanding COVID-19, our current account position between 2017 and 2021 is much stronger than that between 2013 and 2016. Improvements in the current account performance and increased capital inflows have helped to boost Ghana's international reserves. The data shows that gross international reserves increased from 6.1 billion in 2016 to 8.4 billion 4 months of import cover by 2019, and subsequently to 9.6 billion 4.4 months of import cover at the end of 2021. By February 2022, the gross international reserves had decreased marginally to 9.5 billion for 4.3 months of import cover. So in terms of gross international reserves, our economic situation is still much stronger than what it was in the 2016 period.
And that was the Vice President. We'll be taking a further look at this claim and others later in this bulletin. But let's move on to our next story. National Security Minister Albert Kandapah is warning that the perception that the judiciary is biased has dire consequences on the national security of the country. In recent months, the opposition NDC in particular have accused the judiciary of being biased against it after losing a string of cases before the courts. Speaking during a sensitization workshop on the national security strategy for judges of the Superior Courts, Kandapah said, when the bench is deemed to be biased, citizens will continue to take the law into their own hands for personal satisfaction.
Injustice occasioned as a result of the absence of an effective justice delivery system, or delayed justice, or biased justice, is certainly a threat to national security. And indeed, when injustice abounds, particularly in situations where the bench which is considered as the final arbiter of disputes, is deemed to be biased, citizens tend to take the law into their own hands, most times without recourse to the established systems of justice delivery. And similarly, the failure of the criminal justice system to ensure effective and expeditious trial of criminals adversely impact the morale of law enforcement agencies. It also emboldens criminals to perpetrate more crime and breeds lawlessness among the citizenry, developments which threaten the internal security of the state. If you are going to be able to address the security challenges that we have, especially the domestic ones, we need to be able to ensure that there is a judicial system that works. If we do not have a system, a judicial system that works, many people will simply take the laws into their own hands and misbehave and do what they want. Therefore, in trying to manage the security situation, it is important for us that we do get a judicial system that works. And we are all lucky that in the sub-region, we are perceived as a country where the judicial system works and where you could expect justice. If the interpretation of the law is tilted so much in our favor all the time, people will start accusing the judiciary and will not have the confidence that they need.
National Security Minister there, Albert Kandapa. Now, Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah pledged the support of the judiciary in ensuring that the national security strategy of the country is implemented and said judges would continue to implement the law fairly.
In the evolving global situation, where threats are manifold and diverse, this is a critical intervention that will make all of us sleep a little better at night. I wish to take this opportunity to once again commend the Minister and the leadership of the National Security Ministry for their vision and patriotism in making this possible. Of course, the Ministry alone cannot be entirely responsible for the implementation of this document. An integrated policy requires an integrated approach. In the light of this, the Ministry is today seeking to engage the judiciary as necessary partners for the successful implementation of the policy. As the guardians of law and justice in our country, I believe this is the only right, and it is only right and proper that we are fully engaged in this process. Indeed, the Ministry has previously engaged the Judicial Council and today represents another step in this journey of continuous engagement in the collective service of our motherland. Mr. Minister, I assure you, the judiciary will play its role as imposed on us by the Constitution. Colleagues, I do not think that I need to remind you of the critical role we play in the national security infrastructure. While the threats are in a state of constant evolution, one thing remains constant, and that is the fact that the law is one of the major tools that we have to use to combat them. The decisions that are taken by national security officials must be done in the light of what is lawful, and where there are conflicts between the rights of individuals and the security of the state, it is the courtroom that those tensions will be resolved. This is why this interaction is absolutely essential. I wish to urge you, therefore, to commit to this process wholeheartedly and to engage frankly and enthusiastically with officials from the national security. We wish to assure the Minister and his team that we recognize that our partnership is of key significance to our collective survival, and we will work very closely with them to ensure the success of this new integrated national security strategy.
Let's talk health now. And the German government has supported Ghana's vaccine manufacturing plans with the development of a roadmap intended to transform the country into a Pan-African vaccine manufacturing hub. This was part of activities to commemorate World Health Day, observed worldwide on April the 7th every year. It was celebrated globally on the theme, Our Planet, Our Health. We can truly be healthy if our planet is healthy. Tasha Michelle has the rest of the story.
The German Development Corporation commemorated the day on the theme 2 years of COVID management in Ghana, lessons and interventions towards a better Ghana. According to the team leader on health development at GIZ Ghana, Dr. Hoglatil, GIC, on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, has taken the lead role to support vaccine manufacturing in Ghana through development roadmap intended to transform the country into a pan-African vaccine manufacturing hub.
GIZ, German Development Corporation, on behalf of the German government, is supporting Ghana in its development in general. Since, let's say, around 1.5 years, we secured some funding through the German government to partner directly with the National Vaccine Committee headed by Professor Frimpong Boateng. And we are accompanying the committee in its journey to support the domestic vaccine production. And the domestic vaccine production is not only to set up a company who is either fill and finish or producing vaccines, but there are so many other processes like strengthening of the Food and Drug Authority, like strengthening human resource. I'm sure you heard already there is a roadmap. There's a 2 and a 5 and a 10-year scenario. In the first 2 years, it is planned to fill and finish corona vaccines. And then the 10-year plan is not only to do fill and finish, is also to produce the bulk vaccines, not only for corona, but also for all the other diseases, and hopefully maybe even a malaria vaccine. Let's see.
Speaking at the event, the Presidential Advisor on Health, Dr. Anthony Nsia Asari, also said, although the pandemic brought adverse effects on the economy, it has also helped to strengthen the health sector.
In fact, I would say that the pandemic, as a Presidential Advisor, since the pandemic broke out, I said, Lord, we've now listened to the cry of us, health professionals, because health became a very important aspect of the day-to-day governance of this country. There was not a single day that His Excellency the President didn't discuss health, and we brought everybody together. We also make sure that across the government system, that this disease is not only about health, it was about economics, it was about social, it was about education, it was about our social life. So every minister within the sector was involved in this fight, and that's how we work together. And more importantly, civil society and the private sector and our partners were also very important.
In addition, Dr. Angela Ama Akon outlined some challenges encountered during the outbreak of the pandemic.
Imagine us being hit with a virus we had not encountered before. We did not know its character. We had no idea how it transmits from person to person. And so scientists were quickly convened and sent to Wuhan to pick as much information as they could. And first thing we found or we discovered was that, okay, so if you shake hands and perhaps you've passed your hand over your nose or coughed in your hand or something, it's likely if you have the disease, you can pass it on to your neighbor. So first thing, wash your hands, recommendation, and then use hand sanitizers. Immediately that announcement came in, all of us remember, all of a sudden sanitizers skyrocketed in prices. Coughing, sneezing, so let's wear masks so that you can protect yourself and you can break the transmission. Immediately that announcement came in, nose masks started running short. So these were huge challenges across nations. Countries actually put in place laws to prohibit exports and things like that, and a lot of countries were relying on the very few who were actually producing these.
Let's take a look now at the latest Ghana Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey report, which indicates that access to essential early childhood nutrition and adolescent nutrition services is low in Ghana. According to the 2017-2018 report, the prevalence rate of malnutrition among children under 5 is high. 1 out of 5 is stunted, wasting is at 7%, and anemia among adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 years is at 48%. Breastfeeding has been identified as one major solution to the challenge, but Ghana has not done well in this regard. Now, joining me live via Zoom for more on this is a nutritional specialist with UNICEF, Gervais Abalo. Gervais, thank you very much for joining the conversation. First of all, what is causing the difficulty in accessing essential food for children?
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be with you this morning. First of all, I would like to say that development starts from the womb. And as a country, if we want to develop, we definitely have to invest in early childhood nutrition. Every child deserves a good start in life, and they have the right to good nutrition. Breastfeeding has so many benefits to the child, to the mother, to the community, the family, and the country as a whole. If you want to look at access to food, we definitely cannot talk about nutrition without food. Right. If you look at the indicators we have, the picture for food security is not that bad, but much of the challenge is about how households are able to combine variety of foods to have good meals.
Right. I'm curious, when it comes to exclusive breastfeeding, how exactly is Ghana faring in that respect?
When it comes to exclusive breastfeeding, as one of the indicators of optimal infant and young child feeding practices, Ghana as a country declined from 56% in 2014 to current 43% as at 2017, using the multiple cluster indicator survey that was conducted in 2017.
And so considering... right, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a decline in the rates of exclusive breastfeeding.
Right, so we're in the 50% area, 56%, now we've fallen to about 43%. But what would you say has been the economic implication of all of this on Ghana?
Yes, so like I mentioned earlier on, breastfeeding has enormous benefits, not only to the baby, but the family and even the country as a whole. If you want to look at the economic benefits, by breastfeeding alone, you are able to save up to 3,774 deaths of babies, and it also saves Ghana up to 5.8 million USD annually. That is, it reduced the cost, and this cost would have gone into healthcare, but if you breastfeed well, it saves up to 5.8 million USD annually. And also, if you invest in breastfeeding alone, we are able to generate as a country up to 594 million USD, which is about 1.5% of the gross net income of the country. So definitely it has a lot of economic benefits to the country.
Gervais, as a nutrition specialist, what interventions will you propose to help deal with this situation?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to make a clarion call on all stakeholders and to say that this is a call to action for us to be able to protect, support, and promote breastfeeding.
Right.
You can see that we've seen a lot of transition where we now have a lot of working class mothers. So there's a need for us to be able to support them as stakeholders. We can look at the area of maternity protection. That is where we're advocating for extension of maternity leave from 12 weeks to 18 weeks. I think Ghana as a country is doing well, and I want to use this opportunity to laud the country. During last year, Nutrition for Growth Summit, Ghana committed to move from 12 weeks to 14 weeks. So as stakeholders, we will follow up to make sure that we implement this, and in the near future continue to advocate for extension to 18 weeks. Again, one other thing that we can do to support especially the working class mothers is to establish breastfeeding corners in our workplaces so that breastfeeding mothers have the opportunity to breastfeed their children whilst they are still at work.
Mr. Abalu, thank you for engaging us this morning. Gervais Abalu is a nutrition specialist. Let's take our next story now. And medical officials at the Bank Hospital here in Accra have revealed the worrying phenomenon of kidney disease among young people in the country. According to them, the number of young people contracting the disease is on the rise. Speaking at the launch of an ultra-modern renal center at the facility, senior staffer there, Dr. Charlotte Osafo, cautioned the public to take preventative steps. JoyNews' Mausi Numon has more in this report.
In Ghana, the prevalence of chronic kidney disease is estimated at 13.3%, of which herbal medication, among other factors, is a significant contributor. Dr. Charlotte Osafo is a medical doctor at the Bank Hospital, and she takes us through some of the causes of kidney disease as well as its preventive measures.
The main things that make people get kidney diseases in Ghana, the first thing is hypertension. A lot of people have hypertension, but they don't control their hypertension. So it is important that if you are diagnosed with hypertension, it is very important that you control the hypertension. And how do you control it? There are so many ways. Your doctor will prescribe some drugs for you. You have to take the drugs. You also have to do certain things like reducing your salt intake, reducing your weight, regular exercise, eating healthy. All those are important, not only for hypertensive patients, but also for diabetics, because diabetes is also one of the causes of kidney failure. Infections are also one of the causes. So if you go to the hospital and they said you've got an infection of the kidney and they give you medications, you have to take it.
CEO of the Bank Hospital, Idren Puvan, also noted that the facility is open to the general public for the treatment of kidney diseases.
In Ghana at the moment, there's a huge shortage of dialysis stations. So we felt in order to serve the country, let's open up a renal center. And then also we're trying to make it an all-inclusive package so that it can be affordable for the average person to come in and get renal dialysis. So we offer the services currently to the Bank of Ghana staff, but it's also open to the public, to the private, and we're negotiating with insurance companies to bring those patients to us as well.
Meanwhile, Presidential Advisor on Health, Dr. Anthony Nsiasari, who spoke at the launch, disclosed government plans to institute an insurance system to cater for patients undergoing dialysis.
The cost of treating one patient on renal dialysis for a year is about 50,700. And I'm sure most families cannot afford that 50,700 for one patient alone. That's 3 times dialysis a week for 1 year. It's huge. It's very out of the reach of people. So we also want to also set up maybe a renal fund or get an insurance system which will take care of the renal cases.
Dr. Anthony Nsiasari also indicated government's intention to constitute a law to regulate the donation of kidneys to patients who may have to undergo kidney transplants.
But when a patient is on renal dialysis, the ultimate would have been to have a transplant. As we speak now, I think apart from Kolebu, who has done some few renal transplant cases with assistance from people from the diaspora, we don't have any standalone renal transplant unit. But before we can do that, we have to put the legislature in place. I know that when I was in Ghana, we started something like that. We want to finish it as quickly as possible so that we can have the law out of parliament, which will be backing it, so that nobody will go and catch somebody on the street and go and remove the kidney to sell.
Officials of the facility, which currently has a 24-unit renal center, say they hope to expand it in the coming years. Mausi Numon's report for JoyNews.
We take a breather now. We'll be right back on Joy News Desk. Do stay. Welcome back on Joy News Desk. Now, we're way ahead of most countries in the world. That's according to Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, as he jumps to the defense of the New Patriotic Party and interventions of the Akufo-Addo administration targeted at improving Ghana's economy. Ghana is experiencing its slowest growth since 1975, a situation where there's mounting pressure on government to redeem its pledge of transforming the lives of the citizenry. Now, delivering a lecture of the country's economy at the Millennium City yesterday, the Vice President outlined a raft of measures that he believes will turn around the situation. I'm joined in the studio by my colleague, Winston Amwa, to take a further look at this claim and measures outlined by the Vice President in addressing the current economic challenges. Before we start, let's take a look at these graphics, first of all. Right. So, in terms of macroeconomic targets set for 2020 as presented in the 2020 mid-year budget review, here are some of the details. One, overall real GDP growth rate of 0.9%. Then an overall non-oil real GDP growth rate of 1.6%. And end period December year-on-year inflation of 11%. And the fourth point there, overall budget deficits, that is on cash basis, of 11.4% of GDP. Then, taking stock of the primary balance deficit, it was pegged at 4.6% of GDP. And then, an end period December stock of gross international reserves to cover at least the equivalent of 4 months of imports of goods and services. We also take a look at the macroeconomic targets set for 2021 as presented in the 2021 mid-year budget review. Details: overall real GDP growth rate of 5.1% as projected. Overall non-oil real GDP growth rate of 7%. Then end period December year-on-year inflation pegged at 8%. When you go to the overall budget deficit, that is on cash basis, of 9.4% of GDP. And with a primary balance in these times of minus 2.0% of GDP, and gross international reserves to cover at least still 4 months of imports of goods and services. Looking at the 2022 fiscal year in terms of macroeconomic targets that were set, overall real GDP growth was pegged at 5.8%, non-oil real GDP growth at 5.9%, and December inflation rate of 8%. A fiscal deficit as projected of 7.4% of GDP, then a primary surplus of 0.1% of GDP, and gross international reserves to cover not less than 4 months of imports. Let's look at our current macroeconomic situation as the picture has been given to us. Inflation stands at 15.7%, that is as of February 2022. Our import cover so far, 4.3 months, that is February 2022, as at February this year. Gross international reserves stood at 9.55 billion, also a February 2022 figure. And then 351.8 billion Ghana cedis, that's the total public debt stock as of December 2021. Right. So we have quite a number of things to look at, the monetary policy and measures aimed at stabilizing the city. But Winston, so you've taken stock of what the Vice President said yesterday. Yeah. Anything new in there, apart from, I mean, we heard the Finance Minister, then we heard the details given in the SONA. Anything new, reflective?
Well, I think yesterday when we spoke with the technical advisor to the Vice President, right, Gideon Baku, he made it very clear that the Vice President was going to provide further explanation or clarifications about what had already been stated. And so you would hear the Vice President talk about a lot of the things that had been done. And even in his introduction, he told us that he was basically going to tell us where we find ourselves and answer the questions that people have been asking. And so that clearly would send a signal to you that the Vice President was has been monitoring, of course, as expected, the demands of him to come and address issues concerning the Ghanaian economy. And so, yes, I didn't really hear anything new in there.
There was no real departure, was there?
No, there wasn't a real departure from what we already know and what measures had already been put in place. Except that you hear the Vice President make a few admissions here and there, introduce new information. When I say he introduces new information, it means, for instance, he tells you, oh, yes, we have borrowed, but for the financial sector cleanup and the payment of excess capacity and COVID-19, our debt to GDP ratio would not be 80.1%, but 68%. Okay, so
that is when he talks about the 50.1 billion.
Yeah, 50.1 billion. So that's providing new information here, and that's something you've not heard in the past.
Right.
But to be very honest with you, a lot of the things the Vice President said, practically everything he said, is something that we know. The President, in delivering the State of the Nation address, talked about it. But of course, you would want to ask yourself the question. The President in the State of the Nation address talks about how we spent 17.7 billion Ghana cedis, according to the Finance Ministry,
in terms of COVID-19.
To contain COVID-19. The Vice President talks about 8 billion. And you want to ask yourself a few questions. In 2021, when we're presenting the budget, we talked about COVID-19 impacting. As he said, the impact was such that it led to a reduction in revenue about 12 billion, having to spend some almost 13 billion, so it cost us 25 billion in terms of money when it comes to COVID-19. So these are some of the figures.
So those are some of the delicate areas or differences that we see.
You want to look at?
But Winston, I want us to take a look at some of the measures as put forward by the Vice President. So we take a look at how exactly they reflect. Now, getting the economy back on track. The extension of the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy and the Special Import Levy from 2020 to 2024. There's been talk about that. We can also talk about the imposition of a luxury vehicle levy, which was later abolished. Increase in CST from 6% to 9% and subsequently reduced from 9% to 5%. Increase in the National Health Insurance Levy from 2.5% to 3.5%. A sanitation and pollution levy of 10 pesos on the price of a litre of petrol or diesel. The energy sector recovery levy of 10 pesos on the price of a litre of petrol or diesel. A financial sector cleanup levy of 5% on the profit before tax of banks, and the introduction of an e-levy of 1.5% on electronic financial transactions. In terms of the measures, expenditure measures, discretionary spending is to be further cut by an additional 10%. We all know of this, so bringing it to about 30%. Ongoing measures to eliminate ghost workers, as Ken Ofriatta told us, from the payroll. Then renegotiating the energy sector, IPP's capacity charges. And this came into the fray, Winston, as the talk of the cost there, 17 billion Ghana cedis came into the picture. Prioritization of ongoing public projects over new projects. Pursuing reprofiling strategies to reduce the interest expense burden of the fiscal, and 50% cut in fuel coupon allocations, as well as a moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year. So those were some of the details that were given. But like you intimated, nothing new.
Well, these are things that the finance minister talked about when he spoke to the country. I think that was on the 25th of March. So these are things we know already, that the finance minister says we're going to implement this, we're going to implement that. So that's not really something new. And so, yes, I can understand that. I wouldn't say these are new measures that have been put in place. When it comes to even the revenue measures, again, these are things that we know. Except that for many, the first time the Vice President touches on the e-levy, but he brings it within the context of revenue measures and then continues to talk about revenue measures and what the government has done.
And it's interesting, even talking about the e-levy, there's the talk about the fact that the e-levy was mentioned only once and that people would have expected someone who had spoken in the past about not taxing electronic transactions to have gone further to deliberate on the e-levy, but rather conspicuously.
Maybe the reason he talked about it once. Maybe the reason he just...
Digitization and digitalization.
Maybe the reason he mentioned it once. But, you're looking at the implementation and collection of a revised property rate system. It's one of the ways that we should think of, generating more revenue. If you read all the economic outlooks of the country, and we've been doing the analysis as far back as 2019, because a lot of reference has been made about COVID-19 and how COVID-19 impacted us. So then the thing you want to do is to go back to 2019 and find out in 2019 when we did not have COVID,
how are we faring?
Yeah, what was the outlook into 2020?
Right.
And at the time we were talking about how low revenue generation coupled with large government expenditure, majority of which were from borrowing, had the possibility of crippling the Ghanaian economy or making us a high debt to stress country, which we have become currently. So it's important we generate revenue locally, and the revision of the property rate system. And we're told now GRA is going to be helping the Assembly in collecting the property rates. That's a very good measure, we know. The situation is, because we know that the GRA has been taking has been doing a bit of census also of these properties. Where are they now? The last time they talked about almost complete with the census, and they'll be rolling that out shortly. Then you're looking at the implementation of the e-VAT, e-commerce, e-gaming initiatives. That's generated a lot of controversy, because when it comes to the e-commerce, for instance, you'd have to identify them, and you see when they're collecting, when I am buying from e-commerce firms, those firms, they are supposed to charge me VAT and then pay it to the Ghana Revenue Authority. So that's what is expected of them. What I gather is that they've been able to, build a database of these entities engaged in e-commerce, and we're rolling it out from the 1st of April. So that's something that should start. And when it comes to e-gaming and what people would call a betting system, then there's a simplified tax filing.
And maybe that'll be the final one we'll look at.
Yes, and because when it comes to filing of taxes, convenience is very key, and so people have to struggle in order to file their taxes. They might as well default in the filing of taxes. And if there's convenience with it, why not? People may want to file their taxes, and by so doing, if they're filing and if there are any checks that are needed to ensure that people get to pay more, why not they pay more?
Of course, I'm sure in the course of the year we'll have ample opportunity to find out how these measures technically will affect or impact the economy for the bank.
Sure. I mean, it's just been announced, and so once they're announced, you'd have to wait till maybe a quarter is over before you can
and then we'll be able to properly.
We'll do the analysis.
Thank you so much, Winston, for joining the conversation. My colleague Winston Amwa there. We settle now for business up next.
Time now for business. I am Beverly Broom. The Agricultural Development Bank says it will partner various private sector players in the agriculture sector to provide more storage facilities for the National Buffer Stock Company. According to its Managing Director, John Kofi Mensah, the bank will provide funding to enable them construct facilities to aid the vision of the company.
I know that Buffer Stock has a lot of stock facilities. These are not fully utilized. So by providing funding, the first is to try to utilize the capacity of what is existing. If it comes that there is a shortage of storage facilities, ADB would want to support the private sector. ADB as a bank will not put up storage facilities, but it will support the private sector to put storage facilities to complement what Buffer Stock. We are expecting, I said that the enabling environment has been created. So we are expecting that the National Development Bank or the Development Bank of Ghana would advance concessional funding to ADB towards agricultural sector or agribusiness, because there are two main areas of focus, is agribusiness and manufacturing. So we are expecting it, and when that comes through, and we are sure it is coming through, you will see a whole lot of difference.
African countries must apply homegrown technologies and science applications to address the economic challenges. It's one of the recommendations by researchers from Ghana and Nigeria who have been meeting in Abuja. The researchers observed that some problems can only be solved by science and technology. Emma Davis has the rest of the story.
The third day of the study tour starts off at the National Biosafety Authority and the National Biotechnology Authority in Nigeria. The team visited their laboratories and learned how they operate.
When you have a National Biotechnology Development Agency, policies, Agri-Research Council, research institutes, universities that are doing the same thing, and you are saying that these products are coming from America or Mexico, come on, these things will be here because we must use this technology to solve our problems that we cannot use conventional means to solve. Let me also say that GMOs must not come in. They are only coming in because the modern biotechnology is an intervention tool that has been brought to solve problems that you cannot use conventional means to solve. So when people are saying that GMO, why do we have GMO? There are some problems that you cannot use conventional means of technology to solve, but we are coming with modern biotechnology, apply it safely for us to solve such problems for the good of our society.
That will be all for business. For more news, kindly log on to myjoyonline.com.
Time now for sports, and it's a big one this weekend in the Ghana Premier League. Muftau Nabila Abdullahi joins us with more. Muftau, so what can we look forward to this weekend? Muftau, please unmute.
Sorry about that. I was saying that it's a weekend of contrasting tales between two teams.
Right.
One, a defending champion that wants to be a runaway winner of the competition. The Porcupines have got 49 points, while Accra House of Oak are 13 points behind them. And that does not give a very good story about this contest. However, the biggest House and Kotoko matches are that this is not a fixture that has to do with form guide, whether Marcy and Kotoko is flying or not. Accra House of Oak can go to the Bawaya Sports Stadium and pick all the maximum points. And you would recall that in 2018, when Accra House of Oak went there, that was the last Ghana Premier League tie between these two teams. Patrick Gaza scored the only goal as Accra House of Oak 1-0 in that match. Accra House of Oak for the first time in almost 4 years, and they will be sticking to also pick maximum points, and as they look forward to winning the Ghana Premier League title for the first time since 2014. They've not done it in the last 8 years. They want to do it this time around.
Right.
They have the advantage of doing it, and a win or hope will give them the best footing they've always been looking for.
Right. Well, thank you for walking us through the bits that we can look forward to over this weekend. As you've seen on your screens as well, the fixtures that will be coming your way, mouth-watering fixtures in the Ghana Premier League. That's how we draw the curtains on Joy News desk this rainy morning. Do have a good day, and don't you forget that at noon we bring you another one of our bulletins. Have a good day.